So for our next news item, we're going to talk about customer-centric companies and how they sweat the details. And this is really interesting, comes from CMS-Wire. And on March 17th, Brent Summers, Director of Content Marketing for Segment, posted an interesting article titled, Customer-Centric Companies Sweat the Details, stating that customer experience is quickly becoming the business battleground. He quotes a stat from Gartner saying that 89% of companies expect customer experience to be their primary basis for competition. By 2016, 89% of companies. He goes on to say that slick campaigns will always attract attention, but building a stellar customer experience means sweating the details, and it's proven to create loyalty among customers. Looking at the hospitality industry, Scott, how does this really play out? How is this really changing? How is sweating the details really what it's all about?
Yeah, so his words are exactly right, which is that it is really about sweating the details. And like you say, in hospitality, where it's a very service-based business, of course. And oh, by the way, not necessarily a business that you can fully digitize. I mean, there's an awful lot of those experiences in hospitality that are in person. And I think what we're talking about there is kind of digitally powered experiences more so than just digital experiences, where you think about checking into a, to a hotel.
I was going to say we talk about Hilton really, and sort of you look at what Hilton Honors does, and they've been doing it for a while.
By the way, my favorite hotel.
Yeah, there you go. But if you look at what they're doing, travelers who come there, basically they get the extra pillow they want, they get the tea that they're looking for, they get the room they want. All of that information is stored, and they get that royal level of treatment. Yet it's really system driven, and now it's really becoming their expectation. Right? What you get at Hilton Honors, you expect to get that if you go into the Marriott or anywhere else.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say to Hilton is if they could please put the shampoo in the shower. How many 5 a.m. mornings have I had where I had to get out of the shower to go get it off the thing? I know it looks better maybe on this thing, but practically wise, can you just put it in the shower for me, please?
So how does that relate, though? So let's talk about how that relates, because people talk loyalty card, loyalty programs. Yeah. That's all sort of, it's an interesting place. But if customer experience is going to become the battleground, and that's what we're talking about here, is the customer experience and the changes in that customer relationship. You always say, Scott, that it's not about getting them in the door, it's what you do once they're in the door.
That's right.
But how do you change that? Because you're almost talking an entire mentality shift in terms of your organization.
This whole notion of kind of outside-in look, right, where you look at your business through the eyes of your customer is really where it is all at, and kind of examine, and that's why when we talk about customer journeys in a bit, that's exactly what it's about. It doesn't really matter if your buyer's journey is wonderful. If you look at all of your journeys, which is every single type of interaction. So for a hotel, it's the check-in process. It's the getting into my room for the very first time. It's going to sleep at night. And like all of these, going to breakfast in the morning, all of these are journeys. And so if you look at those through the eye of your customer to understand whether or not those are as optimal as possible, especially in customer experience, there's an awful lot of data and information that we have about especially loyal customers that we can put to use to try to really improve those experiences,
but to
whether
do that,
analog or digital.
But to do that, you need to do more than just get the technology right. You've got to change your whole business, your business flow, your business process.
It really is. It really is. Like I say, it's mapping all of those journeys, looking at each one of them, and asking yourself, are we falling down in any one of them? Right? Because if you're delighting in one or two of those journeys, if you're delighting at the check-in process, but every time I go to breakfast, you don't have what I eat, or maybe that's a bad example, then it's a heck of a lot more difficult.
Well, I think it's a great example, actually, because that is what people expect. I've been here enough. You know who I am, and you should know what I want to eat. You should know how I want to be serviced, and service me that way.
Yeah.
And I think that you're right. And we say it, and we often we'll almost make light of it. We look through the eyes of the customer. I know what my customer's thinking. I know what my customer wants. But those customer expectations are so great right now because technology has allowed for it, but now it's requiring it to happen. I think that's the big difference that you're seeing now, right? Yeah. Where people, they say they're competing because now it's no longer, when Hilton did it, it was, we can do this, let's try it and see what happens. Now they're saying, we have to do this because this is what the customer is expecting me to do.
That's right, and you're no longer competing with your traditional competitors. Hilton is not competing with Marriott here necessarily. Hilton is competing with if Uber makes it easier for you to go, get picked up on the street, whatever it is, then that translates into, okay, well, if they can do it, why can't you do it over here? You know as much about me as possible. You know that I call for a 5:30 wake up every single time till I come to your hotel. Why did you let me sleep in this morning?
And just real quick, talk about this in a B2B, because people often talk about this in a B2C setting, but this has B2B implications as well, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So talk about that, because it's less of the person than it's the company. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, certainly. I think in a B2B setting, first of all, you want to think about a B as a whole bunch of Cs, right? I mean, in a business world, there's still a consumer on the other side of it. There still are expectations of an individual who, oh, by the way, brings his consumer expectations right into it, as well as your competitors from other businesses. But certainly, I think the stakes are even higher there because it's a longer-term relationship, typically,
right.
In the B2B environment. There's an awful lot more information that you have and know and that you can make available to them. And so certainly it applies there just as well as anywhere else.
So you're both mapping, so we talked about in a B2C setting where you're mapping the expectations of that consumer. Now you're saying, and I want to go back to it because I think people miss it, you're saying map the expectations of the organization, their cultural stuff, but also look at the individual stakeholders and map them as well.
That's right.
And those are very different. That's actually creates a very complex matrix, but something critical.
You're right. And in a B2B environment, like you say, you have the kind of partner to partner or the company to company relationship that you need to fall under usually some guys. So they have their own pricing, they have their own ways of working, they have their own delivery mechanisms, their own billing methodology, exactly all of that. But then I also have me as a procurement person for this or whomever I am.
Right.
I have my own preferences and settings as well. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that it's worthwhile and it's critical.
But think about that too, folks, because it's not just mapping the B side of the B2B, but it's also one B equals many Cs.
That's right.
And I love that phrase. That's a really interesting phrase to think about. And also something people, I think, as they look at it, could say, wow, now I think about it both business to business and then business to a lot of consumers who are affecting the business to business. That's fascinating.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.